is indeed Memorial Day, and we're here together um, on a day when a lot of kids are not at school and are here wanting to have a chance to maybe get some tips for their parenting. So, welcome. Glad you're here. And just I don't ever take it lightly when parents show up because it's never like a small endeavor to make time to do things like this. And I have a couple of things I'm clicking on and getting ready here as we're getting set up. Um, but really good to have folks join in. Let's see. I think there's one more spot that we're trying to get to going here on the Facebook group, which may or may not work. We might have to just post the video, it looks like. But anyway, so good to have you here. Happy to take a moment and acknowledge the sacrifices that folks have made, our veterans and our folks in active duty on this Memorial Day, in service to our country and our security and safety. So much appreciation to everybody. I have a lot of folks in my family who served and want to really honor them and all the other people who are not just in here domestically, but around the world, doing their part. So thank you. Thank you to all of them. And if it's East Coast time, this is a moment you can even take a minute of silence and remember them. It's a 3 p.m. tradition. But we're here to do something different with our time besides just acknowledging vets. We're also here to acknowledge the good work that each of us are doing to work on this current generation's resilience, helping them help prepare for them for the kind of world that they're inheriting. And it's complicated. It's not easy. It's often something that, keeps us up at night. We wonder about how are kids going to handle life here in this time, post-pandemic, having had a lot of their schooling time online for a period of time, still trying to figure out all of these pieces as a family. And, I would say even more so looking at like day-to-day life and how do we navigate day-to-day problems? And I have many questions that have been submitted to try and figure out and get to the bottom of just these questions and these challenges. And what I've noticed is that there's a lot in common between the different folks who ask questions, like either their ages of kids or the topic they want help with. There's just a lot of overlap, and to me, that's kind of indicative of like what's on the top of people's minds these days, right? And wanting to make sure that we're really addressing the core questions that people have. So, welcome. Glad for those of you who are listening or watching the stream or watching the video afterward. It'll be available to you as well. But I think we have to just go ahead and get started. So, we have an opportunity today to hear other people's questions and get a sense of what our lives might be like if we were to maybe take some more steps towards resilience and better parenting strategies. And the first question that I wanted to dive into, I just really love. It's from a client of mine who worked with me, helping out her older child, and now several years later, her younger child is no longer a baby in arms, but running around as a 4-year-old, and that's a whole thing to adjust to, of course. And we're trying to get a sense of what is, needed to be able to help a child who is starting to show their emotions in big ways, using their body and doing things like, you know, throwing things when they're angry, or hitting family members when they're frustrated or even disappointed. So how do we help young children navigate these big emotions? One of my favorite topics, of course, as we're doing resilience work. And what I know to be true is that children are hardwired to melt down and to express their emotions. And so this is not something that we need to necessarily do something to stop as much as the higher priority is actually to do something to better understand what they're experiencing so that we can show up and support them in a way that really builds towards more and more skills around navigating these emotions rather than stopping the emotions. So that's the first thing I want to say. Now, the flip side of that, though, is that there's a distinction between stopping emotions and stopping be harmful behavior. So what we're trying to do at the end of the day is help children incrementally, right? Scaffolding one step at a time, be able to navigate their emotions in a way that helps them to be able to do things like express their emotions without using their hands or their feet or without throwing things, hopefully. Now, how do we do this? What is the secret sauce when in helping kids with finding their way? Well, what I've known from working in the classroom for 5 years with 3 to 6 year olds and 10 years in the classroom, 6 to 9 year olds, and then raising my stepchildren from adolescence up into adulthood, is that the emotions are here to stay. And we can help kids update their way that they perceive situations so that they're less triggering. And so we kind of neutralize triggers over time as we update their knowledge base of how things work. So, for example, a big conflict for, 3, 4, 5 year olds and even 2 year olds and 6 year olds is what they want and wanting it their way and then wanting it now. And they have yet to like update their knowledge base of like, oh, the fact that they're in a family system where there might be competing needs and there might be the need to like wait your turn, or there, the routine might be the boss, not you at that moment of bedtime is now. So no, you cannot have one more, book or one more 5 minute chunk of screen time or whatever, right? So we are working on the long game, and I want to speak to this because that's where the magic really happens and it really sticks over time of setting up the stage for that learning and that growth and that knowledge base growing. However, the thing that parents get wrong all the time is that we're not able to necessarily address that in the moment in a way that produces an immediate result. So we can't say in the moment, oh, honey, you need to understand, da 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 da. That's just not how it works. I mean, we can say that, but it's not necessarily going to do what we need to do in the moment. And there's some science behind that. And so I'd like to share a couple of things about that. Okay. Um, so first thing is that I mentioned that our brains are hardwired to get upset. Once you realize that it's not like the kid is choosing to be mad or choosing to be disappointed or hurt, but that this is an automatic response, and so is their body doing things like hitting, throwing, kicking, biting, like it's just like an automatic hardwired response when that fight, flight, or freeze or fawn instinct kicks in. It's like normal development working. As a matter of fact, if kids have a very flat affect and don't have any kind of way that they embody their emotions, either vocally or with their physical, limbs, we start to wonder, are they experiencing a full range of emotions? And that's actually more concerning than a child really showing that they are able to express and experience a full range of emotions. So I want to reframe this as like a healthy sign of a healthy nervous system. Once we have that as our baseline, we can dig into understanding what is actually happening in their brains with their nervous systems when they're this upset. And the piece that I really love to bring around to workshops, I've been sharing this to schools, and I've shared this with now thousands of folks through my podcast, through the Facebook group, through school workshops, right? With my clients, with our long weekend, our emotional mastery weekend. We go into this piece and we keep coming back to it. So I want to share it with you. I'm going to put up a little visual for you so you can see it, and that will help us to really ground into like what is happening with the brain. So this model is called the brain in the palm of the hand. Some of you've seen this before, but listen with new eyes, okay, new ears here, because there's always something to come back to here. and or expand our knowledge. If this is new to you, I'll just give you a quick background that Dr. Daniel Siegel, who is really well known for his research on social emotional learning and social emotional sciences in terms of brain development of children, has partnered with many researchers to try to get to the bottom of resiliency in kids and how children can develop the ability to self-regulate and self-manage their emotions. Not get rid of them, remember, but to be able to manage them and navigate them and have some self-awareness around what they're experiencing. Well, one of the concepts that even adults often never were taught is this idea that when you're dysregulated, your brain activity changes. And I'm going to say that again. When you're dysregulated, your brain activity actually changes. It's no longer a smoothly running operation where the different parts of your brain, that we're going to call three different parts, right? We have like kind of like the motor system, which is in your brainstem, and in this model, that would be at the wrist, okay? Which is right at the base of your skull, where your spinal cord attaches to your brain. We have the motor system, we have the alarm system, and then we have the thinking system. And I like to think of it as this kind of instinctual way to get yourself safe again is when the lid flips, is when that thinking part of your brain is no kind of misfiring and barely just kind of keeping you aware, while your emotional alarm center and your motor center really take over and get you safe. And that can look a lot of different ways. The most common ones we know about, of course, are, flight, fight, freeze, and then we can say appease or fawn. Um, so those reactions are really a natural response to a perceived threat or something that is beyond our capacity to cope. So you're now overwhelming or flooding the system. And the reason why this analogy of the lid flip is so helpful is that even children as young as like 3, 4, 5 can get a sense of like, oh, my lid flipped. That's why I started automatically, kicking and screaming and biting and scratching and throwing things, however the body reacts, or hiding or shutting down or becoming limp, right? All the things that we see in our kids and we go, oh boy, an emotion is taking over. They can understand that. And then the other part is not just understanding that their lips flit and then they all these things will happen where their emotions and their body, their motor center just take over, but that there are things we can do to put our lids back on so the thinking part of our brain can come back online. And what we want to be aware of is the fact that there are really these two kind of acts, and this is borrowing from Christine Carter and students, Susan Stifelman and other researchers that I've studied. Um, it it really shows that the kids that there's this hot and go time where they're not able to think straight. And all of us, if you have a brain and you have a nervous system, hopefully you can relate to this experience because that means you have a healthy functioning nervous system, is that when your lid flips, you just really are not able to make sense of things. So you're not going to do things like rationalize very well. You're not necessarily going to make the best decisions or even be able to make decisions. You also won't be able to pull on past experiences. So this, when we're in kind of act one, hot and go, and the lid is off, that is not the time to try and reason like in any sort of complex way with your child. This is not the teaching moment of trying to get your family values instilled in the child or trying to help them understand everything about their behavior. It's not going to process well. So you're basically wasting your breath. So we always say during the hot and go time that you're going to want to empathize, soothe, calm the nervous system down, and use limited language. And what I'll add here, because of the questions that folks have asked, which I'm going to read in a moment, is that when kids are starting to step out of bounds while their lid is off, know that an explanation may not do the trick. You can always try it, but if the behavior continues, even though you provide an explanation of why they should stop doing the thing or why they need to do something differently, just know that like if they're not able to receive that, it just is probably a sign that their lid is flipped. And what you're going to want to do instead are these three things: empathize, soothe them, and help them find a way to calm down. And the fourth thing would be to like keep everybody safe. And that's where we sometimes need to choose for them what what the next action step is. And I just want to welcome in Nadine. Hi, Nadine. If you have a question, put it in the chat so I can queue you up, okay? In time, with enough time to answer it. So when the lids are flipped, getting that lid back on can look like being supportive, but also demanding around the boundary you're trying to hold. Let me give you an example. And this brings up Sonia's question. So Sonia asks, how do I help my 4-year-old with deep disappointment, anger, and frustration? Currently, they throw things and hit family members. So what it could look like to, right, those 4 steps, empathize, soothe, calm down, and keep everybody safe, is first you empathize and say, oh, sweetie, you didn't get to, use the toy, let's say you didn't get to do it a third time. Oh, that is hard. There's the empathy, right? Soothing. Ah, good thing we'll have a chance to play with this again soon. Even be specific if you can. After nap. Why don't we save it right here so it's there when you wake up, and then you'll remember you wanted to play with it. That's very soothing, right? And it has some logic, but it's not trying to convince. It's just reassuring, right? And then the calming down part, if they're starting to move their arms and things like that or throw things and say, I like to say whoa, not no, or like, oh, looks like your body wants to throw things. So an observation, and sometimes that's enough. They go, oh my gosh, I'm throwing things. And they might kind of redirect themselves. Or if they continue to do it, you could say, looks like mommy, or in this case, it's mommy, looks like mommy might need to help you. Help you? Is that right? And that's the simplest version, but you can be more specific. You can say, looks like mommy needs to help you find something better to throw. Is that right? And you can move towards them. All of this can happen in like 20 seconds, 10 to 20 seconds, right? Very quickly. Oh, buddy, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, we can't do it. We can't do another round of this. Um, it's a good thing we can save it for right after nap. And oh, do you need mama's help with that to find something else to throw? Because we don't throw whatever. We don't throw hard objects in the living room. Yeah. And then if the child is not able to receive that support, you might have to escalate a little bit and say, "Oh, shoot, sweetie, do I need to take that from your hands, or can you put it down yourself?" Right? And then if that's not working, you can say, "Oh no, buddy, shoot, looks like I'm going to need to pick you up and help you move your body somewhere where it's safer to throw things, huh?" And then every time you kind of move towards them, and then what kids tend to do, especially with anger, frustration, disappointment, is they will want to pick a fight with you. But you know what? I would rather them say, "No, I can do it myself," and then put the thing down, than have you go in there and just take over without giving them that choice to maybe take a step towards making a better choice, right? So you can still offer limited choices. You can still use language when their lids are off. But what I don't want you to do is ask a lot of open-ended questions. Okay, please avoid this, or trying to make the feeling go away as soon as possible by arguing with the feeling. So what I don't want it to sound like is, that's not something to be upset about. Why are you upset? Right? Or like, come on, honey, you don't have to worry about that. Like it already gives them something to, what I call, like, push back on, right? And the last thing we want to do with a kid who's already upset is give them more to push back on. Because here's what happens, and I'll share a visual about this. If you put up your hand against another person's hand and start to push, and by the way, I've done this 100 times by now in rooms full of parents and teachers and other folks. I put up a hand and I start to push. The other person pushes back to hold their ground. It's a natural instinct. And I do this in workshops where I just start pushing. I don't say a word. And they push back and I say, "What are you doing?" And they're like, "I don't know. You push, so I push back." And I was like, "Mm-hmm." When you give kids something to push back on, they will. So when I say escalate to more intervention, I don't mean giving them more to push back on, right? We're not going to belittle their feelings or argue their feelings. That they're going to definitely be even more upset about and push back. We're not going to automatically take the thing away and tell them they're never going to have it again. That's just basically pretty unfair and disrespectful to them, and they'll feel that, right? What we are going to do is we're going to stay as calm as possible to model our lids being on. We're going to empathize, soothe, help them calm down, and keep everybody safe. Okay. And when I say, how can I soften and join them? What I mean that is, like, sometimes we need to get mad at the thing too and show how you handle that. It's like it, and sometimes I've had many of my mentor teachers do this, and then I realized that this was on the menu. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit about that, like by modeling it to you. So you could go, that is upsetting. Shoot, which is so much better using those words, stomping your foot, than kicking someone or throwing something at someone, right? So, kind of depending on where they're at with how they're managing their emotions, I would try to meet them, but take it a little step, like kind of, in the right direction. We're not going to say, like, I had this one mom say to her two girls when they would start to fight, come on, girls, use your words and be nice to each other. And she was really upset because she kept trying to instill this value of like, we treat each other with kindness. We are, we're siblings, we're family, and we look out for each other. We don't, try and hurt each other. But what she was missing was the fact that siblings do get into conflicts and they will be angry at each other. And they need a way to be angry at each other without harming each other. And so, what we scaffolded for her, for example, is we went from I'm mad and I'm going to hit you in the head and scream bloody murder, to only like keeping our hands to ourselves and still yelling. And she did not like this at first. And all of us are like, wait, I'm going to encourage my kid to scream. It's like, well, I would like to see your kid yell and stomp away versus scream and hit them in the face. And I don't think they're ready to go all the way up the ladder of like what our best behavior would be to be nice and use your words. Because, for example, this child's lid is not on yet. So they're not going to be able to even access a kind feeling, a kind thought. It's too far away from the moment. And they're in the heat of their emotion and they need some outlet to let out that feeling. So going from screaming and hitting a child, their sibling in the face, to screaming and stomping away is on the menu. And then we might work on, you know, stomping away without screaming, or leaving first and then screaming, right? In another room or into a pillow. Like less and less impact on the person, right? And eventually maybe get to a place where they say, I need space. And then they work out their feelings and come back and they do use their words and they are showing kindness and respect in how they use their words. So you can see how we need to get real with where our kids are at and how they can manage their emotions. And this also plays into some other questions that were asked. So we had a question from Lily, who asked, how do I know when to hold a firm boundary and when to be more flexible with consequences that teach, not punish? Nadine also asked, how do I know when a boundary really needs to be upheld with my 2.5-year-old? And then Jenna says, am I being too soft with my toddler? Or are my expectations too high while I'm pregnant with my second? I think these three all go together because we're trying to thread the needle of that balance between being very demanding and kind of like stepping back and letting them sort it out, or getting really involved and being very supportive. It's a difficult balance to strike. And what I want to say first of all is that if you're struggling with this balance of demand and support, then you're a parent. I want to say hi to Nate too. Nathan, hi, welcome. Glad you're here. And if you have a question, please make sure you put it in the chat so that I can see it and make sure there's time for it. Yeah. And I saw that you registered. Thank you. That was great to see you registered. Um, so back to this question of boundaries and the balance between demand and support. What I want to tell you is that it's very similar to how we handle when kids have big emotions and are stepping out of bounds when their emotions are running pretty hot. And we went over a bit of that just now. In the sense that you really like you need to attune to where they're at right now emotionally to get an idea of like how much boundary setting versus like how much demand versus how much support is going to be needed. Now, what I want to say is that first of all, there's a trend, and I get it, for parents to be pretty, pretty nervous and anxious about setting boundaries because oftentimes it leads to kids being upset. And when your kid's melting down and having a tantrum over a boundary, it kind of looks like you're doing something wrong, and it can feel emotionally like really stressful. And I think a lot of us, maybe have backgrounds of parenting where there were a lot of difficult emotions from parenting styles that were maybe very strict and not very accommodating or supportive to balance it out. So a lot of us are avoiding setting firm boundaries because we would rather not upset our children because of what it feels like is happening, which is maybe where, for example, a lot of people have said, maybe I'm traumatizing my kid. I'm worried because they get so upset that this is actually traumatizing for them. So I understand the hesitation. Even if that's not on your mind, it's just a difficult skill. But the good news is that it is a skill. And even if you're not like me and have experience, with now hundreds and hundreds of children and families, there are some tried and true things you can look out for. So here's one. Going back to the lid. Really become a good, what I like to call lid detector of like, how far off is this kid's lid? In other words, how dysregulated are they and how much of their thinking brain is actually available right now? And how much of a priority is it to actually calm down first before it is to address the boundary in a way that will teach them and they'll learn from it in the sense of like a cognitive like recognition or light bulb, okay? So you have that kind of moment of attunement and being like, how far is this kid's lid off before you can decide whether or not it's appropriate to step in and really support them with getting their kind of coming back to baseline calm or calmer before you sort of lay down the law around the boundary. Okay. So um, the most safe approach though, I would say, no matter where a kid's lid is give them both. Be supportive and demanding at the same time. Easier said than done. So let me walk you through it. My favorite thing that I share with clients is that when they want to blend the two together, and this is something that we're all aspiring to do more and more, and they always listen to how I model it, and they can, and over time, they're like, Vanessa, I hear you in my head going, support, demand, support, demand. Going back to the empathizing, soothing, calming down part, and then the boundary follow through. You can play a bit of the what I call the yes and game from sort of improv games where you say, "Oh yeah," and you agree with something. Just pick one thing so that you're not creating that pushing palm situation where you're in a power struggle. You join them side by side and say, "Oh, wow. Yeah, it is disappointing that you can't play this with this toy anymore." Like, "Oh shoot. Looks like there's something really upset you and your body's getting really tense. Built in there is some awareness too, right? You're helping them build their self-awareness. So you're agreeing with something that's happening and you're showing them that I'm on the same side of this problem with you now, looking at it together. And when you do that, then you start to become identified as somebody that is worthy of listening to and might even be helpful instead of hurtful in the situation. Because what oftentimes when kids try to test boundaries, they're testing you and they're testing you as their adversary. And if you can shift it to getting onto the same page with them, same side, that can be very helpful. This kind of like side by side feeling of like, let's go look at that together. We do this with creating routines. We do this with addressing, like outside of the moment, like, oh, what's up with this consequence? Can we practice together? Can we problem solve together? But back to the moment. So it sounds like this, oh, shoot, right? Empathy. And then you shift to demand, like, oh, I really wish I could. I really wish I could give you another 5 minutes on the swing, but the clock, the time says it's time to go, right? Again, you have a third point thing of like the clock, the watch, right? Is the thing we're both working against your common adversary of time, we're having to deal with mutual disappointment of like, oh, too bad, I wish there was more time. Again, feeling more aligned. Kids really can sense that difference than if you're kind of doubling down and becoming very hierarchical with them. And so that's where then the demand comes in though, and you can say, this is what's true, right? Like it is time to go. And that's where your firmness can come in, the demand that could come in. But the way you're going to follow through on it is going to give them a sense of autonomy. It's going to give them a sense of support around their emotion around it. Like maybe they're disappointed and they're dragging their feet and they're going slower than usual. You might accommodate that a little bit, right? But as long as what I would say is as long as they're moving towards the goal, kind of let go of the rest. Yeah. Like the goal of that mom with her kid hitting her other kid in the face and screaming was for the kid to not get hit. So if the child will stomp away screaming, we'll take that for now and call that a good choice. Okay. So it's also about, yes, we're going to put in a demand, but we're going to give them the lowest threshold we can of demand. and enough support to meet it. Yeah. And so that's where you start to build in these choices like, should you going to do it or should I do it for you? Um, if you don't do this now and I have to clean up for you, that means that you're going to need to give me some time later and help me out, help daddy out, help mommy out, help grandma out, right, in the future. There's ways that you can build in little previews of consequences and ask them, is that what you're really choosing? So in case there's someone here who has a child that's not a toddler or preschooler, I want you to hear what it looks like with an older kid. With older children, the advantage is that over time, you hopefully have built up enough of a catalog of these moments that you can refer back to previous moments. And it's not the same as having them review a past experience, like, remember the time when there's this long story. No, it's more like, are we doing this thing again? Are we doing this thing where I need to drag you out of the park? I need to drag you out of the car? Are we doing this thing again where I need to start talking about you having less screen time today, sweetie? Are we going there? Or can we just go ahead and, do the next thing? And the way I'd say right around 5.5 is when I start to have this like little like and I know kind of relationship with children. I see it emerge there. Some kids it's sooner because they just have these kind of wiser older souls and they look at you and they know. But it's generally with little kids, they're still kind of just like a bundle of instincts and we're kind of herding them and giving them very clear like choices. Are you going to do it or do I need to do it for you? Oh, does this mean this or not? And you act and move. As a child gets older, you can start to be a little bit more cheeky with them in a way, like a little sassy, a little like kind of warm and sassy. Like, are we really going to do this again? Are we really doing this thing where you ignore me for 3 times and then and then I get annoyed and then I raise my voice and then you get upset that I'm raising my voice because you're feeling yelled at and then we're both in a bad mood? Or do you think we could just go ahead and get started because, buddy, it's time. Like this is the clock telling us we gotta transition to get ready for school now, right? So like those kinds of conversations can come after you've had many of these, kind of younger moments and the kid starts to mature and understand that you have this rapport where you can kind of go, really? Is this how we're rolling today? Um, and what I would say is that this serves what another parent asked was a question, which was from Laura. She says, "How do we create more consistency between parents when our styles and limits don't always align?" I have a big and a small answer for you. The big answer is Laura and anyone else who wants to align with another caregiver. Find a source of inspiration that you both draw from so you have some common language around your parenting tools and strategies. It could be with someone like me or it could be something else, but get on a line of the same language and it's not going to be a one-time deal. What it's going to be is going to be looking for this a similar source, and this is what the people in my program tell me all the time. It's so nice to have a structured program to follow where I can reliably know that me and my co-parent will have the same information around the same time. So we can start speaking the same language. Things like the lid flip, or are we really going to create a power struggle and push palms, or can we get side by side? Those are things that are a common language, right? Once you study together. So finding a common source and then engaging with it meaningfully once every 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be like a crash course. It's also not one and done. And I'd say once, touching bases with this resource and with each other once every 2 weeks to create a rhythm and a cadence that will carry you through all of your co-parenting years. And you can do that within the structure of a program, like my program is every 2 weeks, or you can do it, self-directed on your own. But that's the minimum amount. I also think that if you do it every single day, it's too much, or even once a week can be too much. So every 2 weeks seems to be just like the sweet spot for co-parenting work. Okay. And then what I want you to be thinking about at the very core of your conversations is this piece, support and demand. How are we going to show up and be supportive? And what are our demands or our structure that's going to help create those expectations that kids can rely on are really true, right? Like we do go to bed at 8 p.m. This is a firm bedtime. They need to experience that maybe for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks before they realize like, oh, they really do mean it. Like bedtime is bedtime. So what can happen with this is what I like to say is how I like to guide the people that I work with is you really do pick an area of focus And you learn a lot by focusing in on one thing because the things you learn from that become like a template for the next thing. So here's an example. We work on routines in my program 2 months out of the year. It's the first month of the program. We're starting in July, so we'll be focusing on routines in July. Well, I don't say, okay, this is the time to just like start over with all your routines from scratch. I say, no, I say pick one. And like people might pick a morning routine or they'll pick the bedtime routine because they're working on sleep training and I can help with that. Or they're working on afternoons because that's when the nap potty time thing comes up and I can help with potty training, right? Like, or they want to focus on that. So they want to get detailed with me on that. Or maybe it's the mornings because they're never punctual and they really want to be a punctual family, whatever it is. But you pick one thing and you workshop it every 2 weeks until it works. And that's where you can start to get excited about using tools like emotional regulation tools, intrinsic motivation tools, the things that, we have at our disposal when we work with, come to one source for inspiration. Okay. Because what can happen over time is beautiful, right? It's like we have common language. The parents know what's up. It's almost like the difference between going on stage and just throwing something together and having rehearsals, having a game plan, having even a script sometimes that everybody knows what their cues and their roles are. And when it goes smoothly, it's beautiful, right? And it's like it's harmonious and you just end up being a lot less stressed. That's what's possible on the other end of aligning it. Okay. But I want to start with getting on the same page with the fact that kids need support and demand. So in those limit setting moments, it might be like, oh, shoot, an empathy statement like, and geez, I wish it could be this way. And here's the demand. And oh, but this is what's happening. And here's some flexibility. And I can help you this time if you'd like, but we are going to leave at this time. It's just like getting into that rhythm of toggling support and demand so that it starts to blend together. And you do have to do some work though. And here's some of the work. And this is what I walk through people in my program. And so I'm giving you like the blueprint and you can always come over to the other side and join my program and do this with me and with my coaches and the other families. But I want to just give you an outline, okay? You're going to want to tackle one routine and get it down. And in that routine, you're going to want to be clear about what the steps are, what the timing is, and how much support you're going to start out with as a baseline so that your kid can meet your expectations with success. If you have young kids, you're going to want to really mind those transitions. If you have older kids, you're going to want to think about other tools that they can start getting familiar with, like timers and a written out schedule that they can check off as they go. Please don't just drop tools on the kids and expect them to use it, though. There's a whole process for collaborating to create the routine so they're intrinsically motivated to execute it because they got some skin in the game. Routines. And then I would want you to inventory the limits and expectations that they're having the most struggle with, right? Sometimes that's as simple as keeping bodies safe, right? So we're talking about hitting, kicking, biting, throwing hard objects, like Sonia's question. Other times it's a little bit more subtle and nuanced, like how we take care of the environment, how we're pitching in for chores, and coming up with clarity around what are our expectations for how much our kids contribute at certain parts of the day. And then you can bring that back into routines. But you need to know what your expectations are and feel some alignment. And again, we might pick one area at a time. I had some clients that, I said, where are you having the most power struggles and meltdowns and conflicts in your family? And they're like, over dinner, meal times, meal times, meal times, meal times. I was like, okay, well, let's get really clear about what is out of bounds behavior during meals and what our goals are, a goal behavior in meals, and what is like the kind of gray area. Let's work through the in between and scaffold goals so that we can kind of set you up for success now, but make incremental progress. And it was surprising how much we could get done in just like one coaching session after they had attended the training. They laid it out, and like within a few weeks, meals were going twice as better. And then eventually they had it down and it was no longer a point of stress in the family. And that takes some time to implement, but they had the blueprint to carry forward. So that's an example, right? So routines, limits. And then the two big ones, one that we touched on quite a bit today, are emotional mastery tools. So when emotions run big, we know what to do with that, how to support them through that, get those lids back on, and intrinsic motivation tools. And why I say intrinsic is because oftentimes we try a couple things and then we drop the hammer. And this is the kid experiencing the pendulum of, wow, you're being so supportive. I can get away with anything. I'm going to ignore you and whatever. And then I'm going to wait until it swings over here. And you're like the mean and stern parent. And now I have to listen. And that's not a fun ride to swing back and forth for all of us, right? And it's the ride that a lot of us end up on, though. And so what I have had parents say is like, it's not that I want to yell. It's not that I want to say, ridiculous things like I'm going to throw that out and you'll never have it again. Um, it's that I run out of good ideas. And I default to something that's kind of severe or like what I grew up with. And I was like, I have done that too so many times. That's so relatable. Why don't we help you come up with things in between, right? So that's where that support and demand comes together. And intrinsic motivation can be the best way to support your kids. So it's not just you showing up and like, I'm here for you kind of support, but actually bringing in smart, intrinsic motivating strategies. And I'll give you one. Okay. The most obvious one that a lot of parents forget about is to make it a little more fun. Whatever it is, if you make it look serious and difficult, they're probably, yeah, they'd prefer to play. Yeah, they're going to want to put that off because it's not something they're looking forward to. So there's different ways to make it fun. You can make it interesting. You can make it like something that they're learning a skill so they feel they're progressing and increasing their competence. You can make it fun by building in some choices that are silly or playful. Like, do you want to hop like a frog or slither like a snake over to to the bathroom to brush your teeth? Suddenly, I had a client do this. There was this whole power struggle of like, I don't want to go to the bathroom. No, because it was the beginning of the serious time. This is fun out here. Why would I go in there when things get serious? I said, well, what if you made the transition more fun? And so instead of it, the tone being like, okay, now we got to get ready for bed. That's not a fun invitation. So with their then about 3.5-year-old, they said, do you want to play, like I think they did sharks and lily pads or lava and rocks. And they kind of jumped from tile to tile, transitioned to the bathroom, went smoothly for many, many, many months after that until she found a new way to push back on the nighttime routine, which happens. But what they learned was that, oh, if you make it into a fun game with choices, my child responds well to that. If you build that into the transition, we can get her moving in the right direction. And if we stop making the nighttime routine sound so serious, she feels more excited to do it with us, right? So a lot can come from these kinds of conversations on intrinsic motivation. All right. So, how do you get on the same page and have more consistency when styles and limits don't always align? Laura, such a great question. I would say working through these pieces together, again, common source of knowledge or information, which could be from someone like me or someone else, and then every 2 weeks working on these projects together. And what will happen naturally over time, and anybody who's ever been on a team, either at work or in sports or at school, you know that like once you get into a groove, it becomes really enjoyable. And what I've seen happen is also relationships improving because there's nothing to test a relationship like having children. How many of you know what I mean? Right? Because, like, wow, this is something we're both deeply invested in, and we might have very different ideas and opinions about what to do. So, getting on the same page as parents also helps the whole family system have more harmony, and also helps to kind of rekindle relationships because now there's like bandwidth. We're not like chasing the problem and like kind of feeling behind. We're actually like, we get ahead of things and we feel like we're on top of things, which honestly has been like a rare feeling in parents that I've been talking to these days. We mostly feel overwhelmed, like we're just trying to survive. We can get out of that survive stress cycle, and we can be proactive. And it to me, I have a sense of like injustice that parents don't already have this built into like our whatever we get from, our community, the village, from schools, from our health insurance, from, society, that like there are these things you can do that like teachers need to know to be a teacher and to be with children as childcare providers that every parent should know and not have to like feel like they're catching up all the time. Because on average, research shows that we're parenting under our child's abilities and age by 6 months to 2 years at any given time. Whoa. What would it feel like to be parenting at their current age and maybe even a little ahead of the game? I'll just tell you, it feels amazing. you really feel like on top of the world. And it's available for all of us with some effort and some commitment and some investment of time and energy, and other resources potentially, but it's there for you. It's on the menu. And I just want that to end with that hopeful piece for Laura's question, that if you don't feel aligned, alignment can be the next thing you focus on and you can get there. And I've seen parents get there. And then you also have to work out the things that come up. Like you might have differing beliefs and values. And we spent actually 2 months in my program just working on like what what underlying values are driving our opinions, and can we see where those align, or can we find ways to come closer together so that it becomes even easier to make these decisions, and like how we actually parent is backed up by the why. And it feels very connected. And it's funny, I bring my families through this exercise, and every single semester, I've been doing this now for many, many years. Every single cohort, every single semester, someone will say, I really wish we'd had these conversations before we had children. And I was like, don't we all? But today is what we have. So why don't we start now? And it's called like creating shared value, and it's creating shared values as caregivers. It's something I pull from John Gottman's work. If you want to check out his work and do it on yourself, you can. But if you want to curate it, I've got it ready to go. You can plug and play it in your family. If you'd like to check out, being in the program, those kinds of things, we have these things ready for you. Speaking of which, I have one last, let's see, two more questions. So if you have a question and you're here live, make sure you get it into that chat, because otherwise I won't know that you have one. So pop it in. And I have two more questions that people submitted ahead of time. But before I answer those, I just want to make sure all of you who might want to follow up with me know how to do that. So by being here or listening to the stream live, you'll see this come into your chat space. There's a way that you can go ahead and hop on my calendar. I opened up some spaces and for a complimentary strategy session. We'll go over your specific questions, things that you took away from this or any other training you've had with me, and make sure you have a plan for how to implement those ideas, with several strategies that you can implement right away. It's also a fun way for us to kind of get a feel for whether it'd be a good fit for us to work together. And you're welcome to ask questions about how I work with folks, especially about my year-long program, the Family Foundations Immersion. The immersion, which has a cohort that enrollment just opened up, and would be delighted to check that out and see if it's a fit. It's kind of a two-way interview to make sure it would be the right next step for you. And if you're not ready to go ahead and hop on for a session with me, but you're just curious about exploring these topics more, I have a really beautiful like self-reflection tool called the Parent Discovery Quiz. It's also I kind of focus on strengths. And what it can do is just sort of give you like a bit of a map, for how you might structure your next steps in your parenting growth, and kind of illuminate like what do you like, that deep question of like, what do you really want? No, like what do you really want? Like what's behind even that? Like what do you want in like 12 months from now to be able to say as a parent, and kind of put down a few thoughts about that. I don't think parents are asked this enough. So over 600 people have taken this quiz, and I have not yet one person say it was a waste of time. So you might enjoy that, okay? And that's another option. Last but not least, I do have also a free gift for you if you'd like to, and it's also a way to like hop on my newsletter, which you can always hop off if you want to unsubscribe, which is to get a free copy of my Calm Down Strategy Guide, which is a link that I put in the chat here. You just fill in your information. We'll also get you on our weekly with all the tips and things, which again, you can always leave it, opt out at any time. But sometimes it's a nice way to keep this learning going. Since you took the time to show up today, I wanted you to have that. And that guide I love because it actually gives you concrete ways that you can help your kids and yourself put the lid back on in the moment. You're welcome, Nadine. Yeah, appreciate you writing something in the chat there. Okay, so last two questions with our last minutes here. Let's do this one. So Keon asked, and just submitted this question recently, what to do when children ignore you? I love this question because really what we're talking about is inspiring better listening. And a lot of parents would love their kids to listen better. And listening is absolutely tied into motivation and relationships. So the first thing I always like to say is, do you have this unconscious agreement? And I mean unconscious, for you and your child, that you don't mean it until you've said it and you've repeated yourself a certain number of times. And what that can look like is, remember when I said the swing of like, oh, my parent is so supportive and so patient, I can get away with anything. And then over here is like, my parent is so strict that I better or else. And like that those two extremes feel like, kind of this ride that everybody's on. Well, oftentimes problems with listening also feel this way. What happens is we get the kids and we get acclimated to a pattern, an unconscious agreement that the kid is going to ignore you while you ask them nicely, while you repeat the request several times, while you try to convince them. And it's not until you get stern and mention a very serious consequence that they finally snap to attention and listen to you. This is not a cycle we want to get stuck in, friends. It's problematic for many reasons, as you can imagine. First of all, it's stressful. Second of all, the kid is kind of being, in a way, like they're ignoring is being reinforced because nothing truly happens while they're ignoring. Yeah. And the last thing is that it can really put a strain on your relationship because, parent is going to get pushed to the state of frustration a lot. Then kid is going to experience their parent frustrated a lot, which then gives a negative impression of the relationship, right? My mom is mean. My dad yells at me, right? And then there's these bad memories and then there's all this like repair that's needed when things go too far. And it's just a really tough spot to keep going into. So what I always encourage everyone to do first, and I do this with my clients, right? 2 months out of the year, we're working on boundaries and limits and listening. And 2 months out of the year, we're working on motivation, and these go together. But the first piece is how you're communicating your requests to your kid. So instead of repeating or like kind of pleading and kind of being in this highly like, oh, would you, kind of space, I would like you to get more clear about what is the actual ask and what are you willing to do to follow through on it if they ignore you. And it's not just like willing, it's also like what would be smart and helpful and maybe even respectful and related to what's going on. And so the more you practice this, the more you'll know in the moment what to do and say to really get your child's attention. Um, so what I would say is know very clearly what it is that you're asking. Know in your heart why you're asking it and like, make sure you're like thinking, is this a reasonable request, first of all? And then go ahead and do what you can to get into the kid's world a bit before you make the request. All of us respond better, I think, in the end, and feel better about the person, right? When someone comes and asks you how you're doing before they ask you for a favor. When somebody notices that you're in the middle of something and gives you a moment to finish it up. It's kind of like this baseline grace and courtesy that we sometimes forget that children might need, or actually do need, as much as adults want to need it. So, you need to know that kids are incredibly egocentric. They're in their own little bubble, and what's happening in their bubble is all that exists or is all that is important to them at that time and is the only thing deserving of their attention most of the time. This is especially true if they're young or if they're immature or if they're tired, they're hungry, they're lonely, they're in their feelings, their lid is off. They're going to be very much just right here in their bubble of attention and focus. So, when you come in with a request and it's super sweet and it's soft and it's kind of like out here, you're not getting into their bubble. That's what's happening. And they know they can just ignore anything outside of their bubble because it doesn't sound serious enough. Yeah. The other thing that we can do is when we come in with a demand and we're like immediately like, why haven't you put your shoes on or something, right? We basically are popping their bubble. And they can have a lot of different reactions to that. They can become startled and scared of you. They can become anxious. They can get mad. They can just immediately melt down. There's a lot of things that can happen, or they can get even more stubborn about it because they're not going to be told what to do, right? You know what I'm impersonating here, like, right? So, what's the difference between floating outside the bubble and actually and popping and bursting their bubble is you like find a way to transition to being in the bubble with them. And my favorite thing to do is shared attention. Put attention on whatever they're putting attention on. In that, not this fashion of like looking over them like, oh, I see you're doing this, and it's kind of this empty thing. It's more like I'm going to come down to your level and we're going to be side by side. I'm going to like come to the side of you, like literally make your body face the way their body is facing. If they're on the ground, you're on the ground. If they're in a chair, you're in a chair. If they're looking out the window, you're looking out the window. Got it? Okay. And notice what they're noticing. Just notice it. Oh, there's a bird outside. They're looking out the window. Oh, you're finding you just picked up a yellow Lego piece, you know? Oh, you just, whatever it is. Um, oh, you're checking out the edge of the fabric on the couch. I mean, it can look like they're doing nothing, but kids are constantly doing something that is a spontaneous or purposeful activity that's helping their brains and their bodies develop. I kid you not. There's are so much research on how children are naturally inclined to do all these activities because their brains are like literally sparkling, telling them, go explore this, do this, try this, right? We all have had kids experiment with gravity, for example, by pouring stuff out they're not supposed to, right? That's not like that's just hardwired in them. So don't assume the best that your child is focused on something because it's interesting to them. Truly. So get in there, share the interest, and then start to move towards the transition of the requests. So a lot like empathizing with a kid's lid off, you're going to say something that is related, and all of a sudden you're in their bubble and you are not invisible anymore. You're not a Peanuts voice going wah wah wah. You're actually in there with them. And they see you as someone who maybe is worthy of listening to. I swear, it's a real thing. I've literally felt like I went from invisible to visible for children when I get into their world with them. And then you can start to transition and start to pre-empathize with it maybe being difficult to transition to your request. You can help them cope with leaving the thing, helping them understand they're going to be able to come back to it, helping them save their work, save their spot. You can do things by like giving them a little grace and saying, "Oh, you need 1 more minute to finish this video, right?" Or you need, "Oh, yeah, yeah, we can take 2 minutes." And then you have them be a part of that. Do you want to set the timer or should I set the timer? And then you preview what's it going to look like when the timer goes off? Are we going to ask for 2 more minutes? No, because it really is going to be time to stop. Got it? Got it. What's going to happen? Timer's going off. We're putting it away. Right. Have a plan. Okay. That is going to be helpful for listening, like outrageously helpful. The other thing you can do is build in intrinsic motivators. What's better? What's the expression? You can attract more honey with or more bees with honey than vinegar. So a threat will get them moving, but honey, making it sweet and interesting over here. Whatever the thing is that's next, the transition is fun, like hopping to the bathroom. We're going to, play your favorite song in the car. We're going to read the next chapter of the story at dinner. We're going to, FaceTime with grandma. Like, I don't know, whatever they're into right now. Give them something enticing, like truly enticing, that's intrinsically motivating. And there's a whole lot more we can do with intrinsic motivation, but that's one piece. All right. So that was great. And last question is from Callista. She says, and this is really looking forward. How do I stay connected to my college-age daughter without nagging and engage my teenage son who shares so little? As kids get older, and I love the segue into this from the last topic, the thing that will kill your relationship on a daily basis is the amount of times they feel like you say or do something that shows that you don't get it. And I'm putting this in quotes, don't get it. It can be anything. It can be their sports of interest, their video game of interest. It can be their friendships. It can be their fashion sense. It could be their music taste, whatever it is. We have to do so much to study and understand and get into our adolescence world, like teens and tweens especially, before they give you a seat at their table because they're literally holding court with friends and their friends have their own little subculture. They're doing their thing, or maybe they're more of a solo, like lone wolf kid, but they've got their own little world that they're cultivating within themselves with their objects, their things of interest. And if you aren't in touch with that, why would they give you the time of day? And I'm not saying that you haven't done this already, Callista, but it's so important for me to make this point, and that if you are doing it, do it even more. And it's different. It's not the same as being nosy or nagging. It's showing genuine interest. In some ways, you can do that with a college age kid, someone who's out of the house, is you find out what they're up to, what they're into. Ask them to send you a video that they've watched that they really liked recently. Ask them what music they're listening to and could they share a song with you. Those are simple things, right? You're not asking them to like tell you everything, every detail of their intimate life, you know? But you want to have like these little bits of like, and just simply let them know, I just want to stay in touch, you know? I want to be in touch with what you're up to. I know things are changing quickly for you in college and it's a lot. So, and then the other thing is have a ritual and it's not negotiable. And I have made the mistake of making this negotiable with adult children and it crashed and burned. So have a non-negotiable check-in and figure out your cadence for your family. Some people it'll be weekly, some people it'll be every 2 weeks, sometimes it's once a month, but there's got to be like a full attention check-in where they're not multitasking, they're on the phone with you or FaceTime or a Zoom call and you are dropping in with each other. And I would pick an activity like we're going to eat dinner while and chat while we're eating dinner, something like that. We're going to both go on a walk and get our steps in. We're going to both go out and find a place in nature and sit on, you know, lay down in the grass and talk. Pick something that you're mutually doing too, that they like. And that really helps with the distance. And then with this teenage son at home, one meal a week. One meal a week, we're going to sit together and we're going to take a turn, like doing some kind of catch-up round. It can be a family meeting or not. I do family meetings in my trainings, but you don't have to do a family meeting, but that's one option. And maybe it's more than once a week, you decide, and figure out captive audience things that you build in. And what I mean by captive audience is, this is my last tip because I know we have to wrap up. It's when you are stuck together anyway. You know, make a plan to go to the coffee shop that's further down the road and to get that donut that they really like. And now you're on a walk. That's a captive audience moment. Plan something where you're driving together and it's just the two of you so you can have some time to just to bond and you have an agreement that for a certain period of time you put phones away and chat. Anything that can kind of be like that where it's a captive, you know, you're both captive there and there's no other choice but to talk to each other. I've had many clients who I've worked with in private coaching, not my group, but who have adult children or a teenage children. And we talk a lot about how important it is to have a family, something to look forward to, even a day trip. And they said this, like, honestly, they get along sometimes the best when they all agree that they're gonna, you know, put the phones away and listen to music together in the car, or they're gonna play some kind of game, or they're gonna go see something really cool, go to a museum in a new city, go on a hike in a really beautiful place with different kind of landscape than they're used to. And we need to bring these back into our lives. And you can find a lot of free options out there if budget's an issue, because you can take public transit places or you can get rides from people. But there's ways that you can just have a plan, some kind of family thing to look forward to, so that you have something to talk about, to organize it. You can all contribute to it, and then you have the actual time spent together. Sometimes the best antidote to like that kind of family angst is, you know, a little road trip or something like that. I think that's why it's a trope in our culture of these like family vacations that go south, but then everybody bonds and grows and like, you know, comes out of it like feeling goodwill towards each other a lot of the time is because they work. So please, please consider that. And one last slide I just want to share with you is just, you know, considering like going forward, right? From what you've heard today. Oops, wrong one. For what you've heard today, right? Like what's something that you want to do more of and less of now that you have had these, you know, pieces and make a note for yourself and make a little plan. I'm now going to do this more and this less. Like maybe you do come in with that pop a bubble demand too much and you're going to do less of that and you're going to do more of the getting down at their level and side by side. Maybe you do too much like you know, kind of nosy questions and you should really back off and just pick like lighter topics to kind of jam with your teenager for a while. Maybe you're doing too much of that, trying to explain when their lid is off, and you know you need to do less of that. And what you can do more of is like trying to help get that lid back on and get everybody right, empathize, soothe, calm, and safe, um, and focusing there. Maybe there's something. And if you are here on live or listening to a live stream, and you made it to this end, please put something in the chat of what you'll do more, what you're going to do a little more of or a little less of. I would just love to hear it and to get a sense of what you pulled out of this. And it's also a way to make it more memorable for you. It'll peg the idea if you actually write it and share it with others. That's part of why group sessions work so well. Like, why I created a group program instead of just doing one-on-ones with people is because that accountability of sharing it with a coach and sharing it with others actually does improve your likelihood of following through. And even better if we're meeting every 2 weeks. But if you're just here for this, at least write it down and share it in the comments, in the chat, whatever format you're listening to this. Go ahead and put it into that part, and we'd love to hear what you got out of this. All right, folks. Great. Ask Vanessa anything. Good to be with you and be together. Again, there's an opportunity for us to follow up and get you some more support. And there are always folks who come to these who sometimes, find themselves inspired to learn more. So if that's you, like, don't be shy. You're not wasting my time or, taking a spot from someone else to get on my calendar and for us to just have a chat, and for me to support you. It's what I'm here to do. Like, I could be training teachers, I could be, a professor, I could be in the classroom with children, but I have chosen this path of helping parents. And I'm very passionate about it and so happy to, like, see folks hop on my calendar and get to know them and get to support them, even if it's just for that single session. And of course, we can always explore working together, but there's no obligation whatsoever. It's just really what I'm here to do. So, please don't be shy to claim that resource for you. Like, I really want you to have it. Okay. All right. And I'll try and put the link in the chat one more time before I head out. But yeah, thanks everybody. Good questions, right? Great discussion in terms of like the breadth of topics, and you got to have a lot of my hot tips that I also share with my clients and help them implement. So you got some hopefully some things to carry your momentum forward today. All right. Oh, and I have one from Nadine. Nadine says, thank you. The demand and support piece is what she's taking away. Awesome. And coming to a mutual focal point with the child before intervening. Yes, yes. Good job. Love that. Yeah, and Nadine, I'm not recalling if you've ever taken the quiz, but I think you would really like that as the next step in particular. I'll stick it in the chat. And then if you do after taking the quiz want to also get on my calendar, please go ahead. Don't be shy. It'd be fun to talk about how you're going to implement that that takeaway. What does demand and support look like in those actual moments? And we can role play it through so you can have some scripts and like what to say, what to do, to actually, for your specific children at their ages, their temperaments, and whatever challenges you're having. Would love to support you. All right, y'all, that's it for today. Lots of love for each and every one of you. Until next time, may you continue to step into being a calmer and more empowered parent as you raise more confident, happy, and resilient kids. And we'll see you next time.